Welcome back. Joining us to put the day's markets action into perspective is Viv Govender from Rand Swiss Offshore. Viv, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, it is the last day of trade for the first half and still no rate cut. Hopes were dashed as we moved into the second quarter, but we had another positive factor there when we saw that AI rally kind of boosting markets on the back of the jump we saw in Nvidia's share price. Just talk to us about what you made of trade this quarter, as well as just the first 6 months of the year.
Well, I mean, if you look at Nvidia over the last basically year to date, it's up 157%. That is despite this week alone having the worst dollar fall of any company over a 3-day period in history. It fell over $400 billion in about 3 days. There was a bit of a slight recovery from that, but it's still down from where its recent high was at the start of the week till now by about 8-9%. But despite that, it's up 157% for the year. It's still the second highest performing stock in the S&P 500 for the year, despite, like I said, the biggest fall. And if you look at the percentage of the stock market improvement, depending on how you define AI and AI-linked stocks, well over 90% of the performance of the stock market for this last, this year so far has been due, and this is S&P 500 I'm talking about, has been due to these AI-linked stocks, the Teslas, the, obviously not doing that well, but things like Nvidia, things like Meta, things like Microsoft and so on, are all doing extremely well over the last little period. Like I said, Tesla is the one exception, though it's recovered a little bit after, falling quite dramatically a few months ago.
So would you say the biggest catalyst for U.S. markets in particular is just Nvidia at the moment, as traders take a wait-and-see approach when it comes to what's taking place when it comes to the Fed's moves?
Oh, it's AI. It's not just Nvidia. Nvidia is an AI story. But if you look at anything linked to AI that has a substantial AI component to it, I mean, the examples I give to you here are Apple and Oracle. Both those results came out. The fact that Apple talked about AI, its share price went up dramatically after not doing that much for about a year. It did more than a year's performance in a week. Oracle as well did extremely well after its results came out, and they talked about AI as well. You even started to see, like in the dot-com boom, of course you're a bit too young to remember this, but back in the day it used to be, you take any company, you had .com at the end and you'd have a premium to that company. You had companies basically that had bricks and mortar companies like that, been around for 100 years retail, that had a website that they were basically had a separate business on that would often be valued more than the bricks and mortar company, just the website. Because of the dot-com bit. And you started to see that happen right now with AI. A lot of companies are coming out and calling themselves something .ai or something AI. At the end of their name, just to get into the hype. And of course, that does pick up a bubble. But if you look at the amount of money being spent here, not just by things like Microsoft, which is spending more money on AI in a single year than the US spent on the mission to the moon, you're talking countries getting involved. You're talking Saudi Arabia. We're talking France. Even the US is looking at buying stuff into these AI chip things. So yeah, the AI theme has been the theme of the last probably year and a bit for the market overall.
So I might have been too young for that dot-com bubble, but at least I'm living through the AI rally. Now, we've had a few elections coming up over the next week or so. France's snap election kicking off on the 30th, which is on Sunday, and then the UK's election on the 4th of July. Just how much of a risk factor are these political events to markets?
The French election is the big political risk. The UK election basically guaranteed, I'll give you almost any odds that Labour is going to win and win a big majority. There's no chance of anybody else basically getting close to them. The only question is whether Nigel Farage, who is the Reform Party, which is the more right-wing party in the UK, more right-wing than the Conservatives even, will win 3 to 5 seats or so. That's this kind of thing out of several hundred that are available out there. That is the only question, and whether the Conservatives are going to drop to 100 or to drop to 60, somewhere between those levels. In France, however, it's very different. France, you're going to have an election where the ruling party is almost certainly not going to win, but we don't know if it's going to be a coalition with the left or the coalition with the right that's going to be the eventual winner of this particular parliamentary thing. If it is with the left, that's the big risk. The right-wing party, and it's a very right-wing party, by the way, more right-wing than, for instance, you'd see the Conservatives or Republicans in the US, etc. These are people that, after World War II, denied the Holocaust and stuff. We're talking about some really people that had, when they formed, they had people in that party that were actually collaborators with the Nazis, the actual Nazis. So it's a right-wing party. But the market would view them as a more positive outcome than a left-wing win. Because the left wing is coming out and talking about increasing civil servant wages, increasing the minimum wage, increasing or decreasing rather the retirement age, costing hundreds of billions of euros per year in extra cost for the French economy, which would be very negative for not just the French economy, but also for the Europe overall. So I think that's the big risk we see coming through from these elections over the next week or so.
And I guess you could say that that's what we're kind of seeing on the local front with the, GNU talks in progress. Yesterday, we did see some jitters when the Rand did tank to a 1-month low at 1850. And then we did see it somewhat recover when ANC's Secretary, Fikile Mbalula, said that they are close to closing that deal. Just talk us through the movements we've been seeing in the Rand on the back of, the political developments.
Okay, there's a very simple calculation that Rand's making. More chance of an ANC DA government that some of the Rand is, the less chance of that happening, the weaker the Rand is going to be, despite whoever the other parties are going to be like. You can see very clearly whenever the DA talks about leaving, Rand gets weaker. DA is close to getting a deal done, Rand gets stronger. The market is quite positive about that. I think, quite frankly, our constitution is not well designed in terms of this kind of government. And unfortunately, I think this is probably going to be the kind of government we're going to deal with for many, many years to come. This coalition government. We are over probably the days of a single party getting 50+% of the votes, consistently. So we're going to have quite a few coalition governments for our foreseeable future. And we don't have the kind of timelines in place in the constitution. 2 weeks is not enough to get these coalitions going. We'll see when the French elections happen. We'll see when, if, so other European elections happen, how long this sometimes takes. Sometimes you have governments not being formed in some countries like Belgium for multiple years. It really is a difficult thing to get them going. The second part of it is we need more clarity about how quickly the cabinet has to be formed. Because right now the cabinet formation is a very vague kind of thing, depending on they're doing the best they can. You know what I mean? So yeah, in one end forming one of the president and stuff here, or from the government that's very too quick, the cabinet is a bit too slow. So we need to fine tune a couple of these things, I think. Otherwise, we're going to encounter these problems many, many times into the future.
A really big year for elections, and that just really driving sentiment throughout markets this year. Viv, before I get your stock pick, I just want your thoughts on Nampak, that disposal plan really gaining traction. They've managed to swing back into profitability as well as reduce their debt. Talk us through what you made of those numbers.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're looking at Nampak here, up about 6% today. It's had a really strong rally. Basically, the last couple of weeks, it's up almost 50% in the last 2 weeks or so. This company has had a very, very tough period. If you look at just what's been happening with regards to some of its interventions out of the country, basically it was a lack of funding in South Africa. This is basically a resurrection story. And people right now are quite positive about the resurrection. We don't have the facts yet to basically say that it's going to be definitely successful, but right now the signs are looking positive. And because of the large fall it has had, the recovery that we have seen right now kind of is to be anticipated. But I mean, we have to back this up down the line with actually these plans working out properly. So yeah, very positively, and the signs are good. Don't get me wrong with that. But we didn't know for certain this is going to be eventually successful or not.
So Nampak, not one you're hanging your hat on. What is your stock pick, Viv?
Picking Novartis. They just did a deal earlier this year with Alphabet/Google, again around AI. Google has a program called AlphaFold 3 that allows you to develop drugs more easily, etc. And I think if you start seeing AI being applied to drug formation, you could have a whole new market being created that wasn't available, say, a couple of years ago. And the companies that have deals with them, like Eli Lilly and Novartis, are probably going to be successful or be more successful. And just to be aware, yes, Google is neck and neck with OpenAI and Anthropic, etc. when it comes to LLMs. Nobody's close to Google when it comes to things like AlphaFold and pharmaceuticals and so on.